Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll reopen the meeting to move on. And our next issue on the agenda is 7.7, and that's the Y11 Development Surge Staffing Course Evaluation. That's going to be presented by Aaron. Well done, Aaron.
Morning, Chair, Joint Committee members. The tabled report shows the evaluation results from the Y11 Development Surge Staffing Course, which was conducted from December 2nd to 6th in 2024. The course was aimed to enhance the Waikato CDM Group's deployable surge capacity by training a team with strong mentoring and leadership qualities. The evaluation, based on participant feedback, indicates that the course was beneficial with minor adjustments suggested. The report recommends implementing these changes and delivering the course annually to improve the group's collective capacity and capability. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for, yep, we've got Councillor Williams, or Deputy Mayor Williams, sorry, I should say it right.
Was one of the recommendations that you get better actors?
Better actors? No, they're excellent.
Emma and I called in and we got pushed into being bossy with the comms team around and signing up for the declaration. The
participation by joint committee members was excellent, and it was encouraged. It was great.
It was actually something really worthwhile seeing when I finally got in and found the location. But as I say, it's a great location, and that was, to me, a very well-run exercise. So it really was something to watch. So it was.
Thank you.
Could I? Yep. Sorry, Councillor Pike.
Sorry, just a quick question on councils that didn't participate or didn't attend. Do we understand the barriers as to why they didn't attend? Is there ways we can address that?
Yeah, there were some time frames in the lead up to advertising. We're going to be starting advertising it in May this year, so we're looking at the similar time frame, but giving those councils much more lead time to get staff available and have them ready.
Fantastic, thank you. And agree with Deputy Mayor Williams' comments that it was a fantastic experience and good to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I call for somebody, anyone else that wants to actually discuss this motion? We're going to discuss this issue. No further discussion. Can I have somebody move that we accept the report? Deputy Mayor Williams. And down there, Councillor Smith. All those in favour, please. Against? Motion is carried, ladies and gentlemen. We now move on to item on your agenda of 7.8, and that's the coordinating executive group meeting. And we move to the Deputy KEG Chair next to me, Susan. Susan Law, so I allow you to go to.
Thank you, Chair. The meeting of KEG earlier this month is pretty much as covered by the report. There are just a number of three things I'd like to draw to this meeting's attention. The first related to the public consultation of the group's strategic plan. KEG recognised the considerable work that Vicky has put into getting the plan to this part so that it can go out for public consultation. It's no mean feat, and we did want to recognise the work that Vicky had put in. The second relates to the tiered approach to recovery managers to bring it in line. It was to provide the resilience across the region, as has been noted in this meeting. And the third was we were blessed with, or we were graced with the presence of the Director of NEMA at the meeting. What I got from his input into the KEG meeting was that there is a lot of change happening in the sector. He did talk about the approach to the emergency management bill, how that would then impact the groups such as ours across the country. It may have been at lunch or it may have been at the meeting itself, but it did strike me that one of the things that's happening to our sector, largely the local government sector, but I prefer to call it the sector that's lowest to the people, closest to the people, is that there's massive change happening and a considerable degree of choreographing needs to happen to ensure that all the different pieces of legislation going through Parliament or over the next 12 months happen in a way that doesn't cause major conflict or disruption in our local communities. Having said that, that was the KEG meeting in March. Happy to take questions.
Just from the chair, I see that in the items for information, we had the coronial inquest update. Is there any further information on that for us at all?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there is. I think we're in a holding pattern at the moment, awaiting for hearings. But what was reported previously to this committee still stands.
The only point, as I say, of interest for us is that it was delegated to be in our actual area of operational area. That was the only area of interest. And the other thing I was going to mention is that I see that we have a new chair for the strike, as I say, which was Mr. Kelvin Powell. So that was an appointment put in there, which I think is good for that committee because it's vital that we have that continued. With that, any further discussion? Michael, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just on the decisions that you made on that marae preparedness, can you just elaborate a little bit on that? Like, how is there a time frame, or who's going to be involved? I mean, I'm glad that it's in there with other bits and pieces in the draft plan, but I think that was a big one that came out of the JMA's consultation with emergency management. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Essentially, it relates to an audit, we're going to call it an audit, of the preparedness of the different marae across the region. That was approved by KEG to proceed. It is to, I think, to inform future planning and future work with our marae. Julian, did you wish to?
So we touch on it a little bit in the in one of the public excluded, which is around the legal advice. But I think just building on what the KEG chair, Susan's just said, is one of the recommendations in that legal advice anyway was to undertake a stock take of what activities are being undertaken. That crosses over with a piece of work that was already being done by the Community Resilience and Recovery team, which is to undertake an audit of what activities each council is doing with their iwi partners in relation to the current marae preparedness strategy. The current marae preparedness strategy is a 2011 document. It hasn't stood still. We have had some iterations of that. So there was something called the PACE document, which is the public, I can't remember the actual acronym now, community engagement, but it's public awareness and community engagement document. And that had some tools within that document that built on the marae preparedness and added to how we better engage with marae. So what we've done is say, stop, let's have a go around each of the councils, have a conversation around what engagement's going on with which marae, how those marae are prepared to either look after their community or be part of the wider emergency management system and look after the wider community, and have a look at whether there's any best practice, which we think there is, that's been undertaken that's not listed in the marae preparedness strategy toolbox that we need to promote to other people. Because there are some councils who are probably very good at doing some excellent work with their marae and not promoting that work with others. Our job is to actually identify those nuggets of gold and tell everybody else about it and amend our plan. So that is the review of the My Preparedness Strategy. That's what we're doing, but it crosses over with the legal advice recommendation that we'll talk about later that says you should undertake a stock take of what activities are ongoing before you move forward with any work programs.
Thank you very much for that, Julian. Any further questions on the coordinating executive group? Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Councillor Downard. Seconder? Councillor Thomas? So Councillor Lee. Yep. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried, ladies and gentlemen, for the acceptance of that report. Now go on to the next issue, which is actually 7.9, and it is the HIKURANGI subduction zone consequence project, and that is going to be used by Danielle O'Shaughnessy. Danielle, that's who I've got down there. So, yeah. Welcome to this. This is a very, very valuable piece of information. And I believe that there's a few questions I'd like to ask at the end of this, but, you know, and develop a little bit further. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So regarding report HIKURANGI Subduction Zone Consequence Project, I've actually put together a presentation that will kind of give a bit more information and understanding to what's included, involved, and what information we have so far. So next slide, please, Brooke. So this slide shows the background information on the HIKURANGI subduction zone. Nationally, it's considered one of New Zealand's greatest seismic risk, and research indicates that there's a 1 in 4 chance of a large subduction zone earthquake on the HIKURANGI subduction zone in the next 50 years. An event like that would cause catastrophic damage across the North Island, including the Waikato region, with impacts and consequences in the built, natural, economic and social environments. Next slide, please, Brooke. So this project aims to increase community resilience and strategically plan for the response and recovery from a maximum credible seismic event for the Waikato Sea Dam Group. So the objectives that we have included is to understand the most likely impacts and consequences on the Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group area from a maximum credible seismic event. And for this scenario, we've used a magnitude 9.1 on the built, social, natural and economic environments to enable the development and implementation of area-specific reduction, readiness, response and recovery planning, and to understand and plan for regional coordination across those 4 Rs. Next slide, please. So what we've done so far is, first, there was the consequence planning report, and that was a literature review to understand all of the HIKURANGI subduction zone consequence planning research and resources available at that time. And it developed recommendations on how to address some of the gaps in the knowledge, in particular for the Waikato region group area. This led on to some exposure modelling. So with GNS, we used the maximum credible seismic event to model the exposure across the Waikato to the hazards of ground shaking, liquefaction and landslide susceptibility. In the next few slides, I'll go through a bit more of what the results showed, but it showed that there was modified Macaulay intensity scale ground shaking ranging from 5 to 9 in the Waikato group area. It then, through the modelling, showed the exposed elements. So this included buildings, infrastructure, community sites across the Waikato group area. This information has been shared with each of the territorial authorities last year so that they can include it into their geographic information systems and start to understand what that exposure looks like for them. Next slide, please. So this shows a map of the model results for the scenario that is being used. It shows the intensity of the ground shaking in the modified Macaulay intensity scale. So the darker colours is the higher intensity. It's important to note that this is just one possible earthquake rupture scenario on the HIKURANGI subduction zone. And although some factors, such as the location of the epicenter or distance from it, the magnitude or the depth of the epicenter could vary the hazard intensity exposure, planning for a maximum credible event supports planning for any event size triggered on this HIKURANGI subduction zone fault line. Next slide, please. So it's quite difficult to see this slide. I apologize for how busy it is, but it shows more information on what the exposure results showed. So it's got, for each of the territorial authorities, the modelled ground shaking in the MMI and liquefaction likelihood, and then some words that shows what that could mean from a point of view of the ground shaking intensity. Descriptions are taken from the GeoNet website and app. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much. This is, you're carrying on, that's
Yep,
the,
yep,
just
yep.
your ruling that we're reading it, exposure.
So this is some of the exposure elements that we found. And so this is the exposed buildings and the roads. And so the graph, you can see that some of the more southern districts in the group area have quite a significant number of buildings and roads exposed to quite high intensity shaking, looking at kind of magnitude 8 and 9. Next slide, please. So what we're doing now is we're moving from the exposure modelling towards the estimated impact assessment. So it's using the hazard intensity information, the exposed elements identified, and adding in the vulnerability of information of those exposed assets. And so then that should estimate the impacts. So this will be things like the possible level of damage to the buildings and key infrastructure across the Waikato CDM group area and where in particular within it, what the direct damage cost to the buildings and some of the infrastructure could be, and where within the civil defence group area it could be, and using those estimates to inform how many people could be impacted and displaced and where that could be within the Waikato civil defence group area. It's important to know that these impact assessments don't include cascading hazards such as tsunami, multiple large landslides, landslide dams, post-earthquake fires, dam breach or break floods, debris scale flow, large-scale debris flows, changes in river course and floodplain subsidence. But these should be considered within the consequence planning for an event like this. These results can also identify remaining gaps that need further work to understand them and build on what we can know to better prepare. Next slide, please. So some of the examples of the anticipated impacts are in the table above. What we're looking to do is to use the knowledge and understanding gained from this project to guide the conversations within organisations, with stakeholders and with communities. Across all of those groups, this information creates the opportunity for informed decisions in relation to the risk. Apologies, wrong slide. That relates, yes, that relates to the different types of information that we're looking to understand the impacts of in the different environments. Next slide, please. So what do we want to do with the information that we get in the results? So we want to build on the impacts to understand the consequences and the interdependencies. And we want to use the information to communicate that risk and to enable the development and implementation of planning and preparedness activities across the 4 Rs. So the table outlines some of the examples of planning and preparedness activities across the 4 Rs, and I'll expand on a couple. So within reduction, this could also look like overlaying the building damage estimates with earthquake-prone buildings to better understand the risk and consequences. You could also combine it with post-disaster buildings, such as hospital, community halls, or key council facilities and schools, to inform and drive building remediation or emergency contingency plans for the buildings, or to support requests for funding to get the buildings to a more acceptable standard. In response, it was to inform response planning, exploring options ahead of time, and understanding those cascading consequences and the interdependencies so that we can collaborate with others to coordinate activities, understand possible resource constraints, identify options, and what needs to be sorted in readiness to enable those options within response. Next slide, please. So why is this so important? An event of this severity would cause catastrophic damage across the North Island, including the Waikato region. I have some content that I will read word for word from the Catastrophic Event Handbook published by NEMA in 2024. And although it doesn't relate specifically to this event, this would meet the catastrophic nature that the handbook relates to. Gaps in resources required to meet New Zealand's response objectives will be identified and sourced from across the emergency management system as efficiently as possible to meet the needs of communities. During a catastrophic event, finite resources will likely not meet the needs of those impacted. As a result, emergency managers across all levels will face difficult and complex decisions when prioritising various needs based on limited information. So what this means for Waikato is that possibly other national and potentially international resources will be prioritised to more severely impacted areas. And the region will need to plan to respond to this event using their own resources, with the possibility of the resources in the Waikato being directed to more severely impacted areas or to help support more impacted areas. So this project presents an opportunity to have more informed discussions with those we engage and empower, explore more options and make more informed decisions across the 4 Rs to collectively better prepare for potential impacts and consequences across the 4 environments from a large HIKURANGI subduction zone earthquake and other emergency events that the group could face. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Tanel. That's an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Just one question quickly. When we're preparing these plans, do we do this in coordination with other regions? Because it's critical, I think, having a national event. I do agree that we will be on our own, but I really worry a little bit that other severe events, they're preparing their plans without coordination with us. And I'd just like to put that to the meeting and see what everybody thought about it.
I can talk to that question.
Can I, just before you want to speak first?
Julian, reply.
Thank you.
So the short answer is some groups have worked together. So, but that was by, being blunt, that was by invite. It predates me, but that was by invite only, and the Waikato were not invited to be part of that collaboration at the time, is my understanding. So there are a group of councils who are closer to the coastline who, East Coast Labs was the project. That was, I think it was Tairāwhiti, Gisborne and Bay of Plenty. I think it was those 3 councils that did some collaborative work. We were not part of that, neither was Auckland. In terms of what are we doing, so this is our own research based on the Waikato. Look, we are required to now look at where those impacts cross borders, because this is, we know that the south of the region's in for a very bad day if this plays out. And it's not going to just start at Taupo and work its way up. There's going to be issues going across the border in Manawatu, Wanganui. There's going to be, of course, over in Hawke's Bay. So we are going to have to join our research up with their research up, but in business as usual. But the coordination on the day, if this happens, the 1 in 4 chance in the next 50 years, the coordination on the day will have to come from central government, because each region will be doing its own. Each region will be looking out for its own region. That's the reality of it. And if anything, this report for me, and particularly it was that last slide, if you want, is individual authorities. So as a group, we're on our own. That's how we've got a plan for it initially. But the individual authorities are also likely to be on their own for the first day or so. And so if there is a feeling that it's okay, we're part of a collective and we're a strong collective in the Waikato, which we are, but the reality is everyone gets impacted in one way, shape or form. So everyone will be doing their own assessment in that first day or so. Looking for building inspectors from Hamilton City or anywhere else up in for Taupo is probably unrealistic in the first few days. So everybody has to look at that business continuity planning internally to their own authority. And then once we understand where people are not as impacted as others in the Waikato, that is where the group office can start pulling staff from the likes of Thames or Waikato District and Waipa and sending them down to Taupo and South Waikato, and also speaking to NEMA and asking the NCC for resources from elsewhere like Northland or Auckland, wherever we have those gaps. So the importance, and I come back to one of the actions that was in the group work plan that's not progressing as much as we'd like it to, is that business continuity. If you want, if the local authorities want a reason to have a look at that, it's this report. So everybody needs to have the resources to look after themselves for that first couple of days. But going back to your question, absolutely, we have to talk across borders with our colleagues. But those, I suppose what I'm saying to you is those conversations are great now, but when it happens and the balloon goes up, NEMA will have control of this. So whatever agreements we have made between us and Manawatu Wanganui or Tairāwhiti or Hawke's Bay go out the window, because it's NEMA that are pulling the strings and doing the national coordination.
Thank you, Julian. Councillor Durnard?
Yeah, thanks. Very good report. The only thing that I'd like to see probably a little bit more on is transport connections and roading connections, because we've seen that with Gabriel, where communities are cut off, and and especially with an aging population with a lot more retirees, especially living in at-risk areas, is that I'd like to see, just that whether it's TAs or whether it's NZTA, they have got plan B and C in place, that if one road is closed, that another road is accessible, not only just for emergencies, but also for truckings, because we've seen that up in the Coromandel where, trucks were using roads that weren't made for trucks. So yeah, just in these projects, I'd just like emphasis on a little bit more on roading connections.
Thank you for your comment. I can reassure you that in this next phase, roading is included as one of the key infrastructures that is being modelled around the different levels of impact. We have presented the initial findings to our Waikato Lifeline Utilities Group, of which NZTA are a member, and the roading infrastructure operators and owners of the different councils who were available attended. And so we are getting as much information to make sure that that can accurately be reflected. And it's also being kind of considered with the priority routes work and linking that in with all of other North Island regions that have those key routes in and out. So it's definitely being considered, and hopefully when it's presented back with more of the findings of the next bit, we'll be able to give you a bit more about that. Thank you.
Councillor Buckthorpe?
Thanks, Chair. Before I go, I think John's had his hand up online.
Well, I had John next on the list.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go first then. Thanks very much. Janelle, yeah, really good report. I just have a question, or two really. Why was a 9.1 seismic event landed on when it's well, I'm not sure it's actually realistic. I think, and the reason I ask that is we're currently doing a Hauraki Plains adaptation plan, and we've had the community group exposed to the modelling that's going to happen from this HIKURANGI event. and questions were asked was, what is the plus or minus probability of that modelling? Is it really good, or are there flaws in it? And it appears that it could be a lot better than it is. But the point is, it's had quite an effect in creating a lot of stress and uncertainty about where those people live. Do we need to land on something that's more realistic, like an eight seismic event rather than a 9.1? Are we scaremongering? That was my question.
Thank you for that question. I think you raise a good point. The reason what's termed maximum credible events are used is because it is on the top scale of it and less likely to happen. But if we look at the worst case scenario and the worst possible thing that could happen, then we can work down that hopefully any actions we take will prepare us for what may happen if it's an 8 or a lower magnitude earthquake. It is a fine balance, and it is quite a difficult one to navigate between that tipping into scaremongering. But research shows that 9.1 is a feasible, probably the maximum feasible that could happen. It doesn't mean that's the one that will happen. But yeah, it was a difficult decision to make, but it was based on guidance and other maximum credibles that had been used for the scenario in it. So it was between 8.9 and 9.1. I think 8.9 was also included in this initial round, and there wasn't much difference between the results of 8.9 and 9.1, but that's the lowest magnitude that's been used for kind of these kind of planning consequence.
The plus or minus probability, I think Rick Reefting was going to go away and try and get a better model for the ingress of the sea in the Hauraki Plains around that modelling, because it really scared a lot of people, because he felt it wasn't 100% modelling. Never can be, of course, but yeah.
Thank you. Can I clarify, is that for the tsunami modelling? Yeah. Yes. Yes, tsunami isn't included in this this one, but there are models out there available that include the tsunami. And again, they use similar magnitudes, and like you say, it can be quite confronting. So yeah, I can't comment to what Rick has talked about in that. But.
We now call on Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair, and appreciation to everybody who has worked on this with a 25% chance in the next 50 years of there being a major event on this, which is described as catastrophic proportions, is something that should have our absolute focus. And I think it's really important that that we as a committee acknowledge that and understand that we are dealing with very high probabilities of a significant event. And I, for one, don't have any problem with seeing this modelled on the maximum potential loss, because it is something that everybody has to have wide open eyes as to what the potential of the catastrophic damage could be to our region if this should happen. The two areas that I just wanted to focus in on, one is the number of older buildings that we have within the region, and particularly within my territorial area of Thames Coromandel, and the fact that they really, I don't think from what you were saying that these have been modelled into the potential damage. So I just wouldn't mind some further comments on that. And the more significant one that concerns me the most is with 400 kilometres of coastline around the Thames Coromandel district, is the risk of tsunami and the impact from that, which I believe is our greatest risk. And I just wouldn't mind some comments in regard to what are the next steps in regard to that modelling and the timetable for when we could expect to see something from that.
That one I'm we'll probably have to come back to you on. I know that there has been a director's guideline around tsunami and community engagement and looking at redoing the modelling, and that's some work that we are looking into, which will include then looking at new modelling and rezoning and things like that. So it would probably be included within that, as opposed, and that might also incorporate some scenarios like this, but I can't give you a definite answer. I could come back to you after I speak to my colleagues in the regional resilience team.
Councillor, yeah, sorry. Carry on.
Sorry, and could we just please, Chair, note that as an action item, that so we don't lose track of that. I think it's extremely important based on the 25% probability factor of something of a major nature occurring, and not really understanding what the implications of that could be in our coastal areas.
Talk to that.
Yeah, I will bring that up. Just to remember that Councillor Grant also asked about aged infrastructure within his area. That was the first part of his question.
Apologies for not answering that, Councillor Grant. So that is being incorporated as best possible within the impact assessment. So GNS are using a model that looks at fragility, and they have a building layer that has the information on vulnerability to the extent that it's available to them. So that is being included within the model that the results should be later in the year. So when we look at the impact to the buildings around, it's in a scale of different classified amounts of impact, ranging from not impacted to complete failure possible. And that should hopefully start to answer some of those questions. Of course, it's only as accurate as the data that's gone into it, but it will certainly start helping to guide what we might need to know more, what might want to investigate further.
Thank you, Danielle. Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to Councillor Grant's comment about the tsunami modelling, just to give you some assurance as a committee that whilst there isn't modelling or new modelling on the 9.1 at this moment, which is our latest or what we've done as a region, there is some modelling for a 8.9 that includes a tsunami. So there is some modelling available for an 8.9 that was done by East Coast Labs that does show the impact on our coastline, including Auckland, along the up along Thames Coromandel. So yeah, that modelling does exist. It is no different in terms of impact. It is actually not as catastrophic as a local source tsunami from the Tonga Kermadec Trench, for example. So it doesn't require TCDC to look at anything new other than, or that modelling doesn't, other than what you've already modelled for worst case scenario for a local source tsunami. But of course, we will rerun that model based on a 9.1 when we get a chance.
Thanks, Julian.
Are there any further questions on this model at all? Councillor Lee.
Yeah, just through the chair. Thanks for the report, Danielle. I was just wondering, are we able to get a copy of the presentation that you stuck up on the screen, just so we can take it back and then we can all process it?
Yes, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
From the chair, I would actually support that. I think the more awareness we have, the better it would. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for your presentation. And as I say, can I have somebody move that we accept the report? I'll move from the chair. We have someone to second it?
I'll second.
Thank you. That's John. Is it John Grant? Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to what is the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, update, and that'll be presented by Matthew, as I believe. Thank you, Matthew.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you very much. In terms of, I'll take the report as being read. A few additional parts that I just want to make some further comment on from the report. As you'll be aware, on the 10th of October last year, the government released our long-term vision to strengthen the New Zealand's emergency management system. This is through the Emergency Management System Improvement Programme, which has been set up to implement 15 high-level recommendations. We're partway through 4 phases now. We're currently under phase 2. We're well underway. We should actually be finished in that phase very, very shortly. What that means is that we're quickly working through phase 2. It is a scoping exercise, so there's a roadmap that has been developed. As part of that, the KEG chairs and also joint committee members were recently presented with that roadmap, and we'll be working with that and taking that through to Cabinet shortly. Once that's gone through to Cabinet, they'll look at that and they'll be bringing that back through to NEMA, and that will then go back through to CDM groups for further consultation and discussion, also with our colleagues across other different agencies. The other area that I just wanted to mention was the Emergency Management Bill. As Vicky's also mentioned that earlier, that's going through at the moment in time with further discussion with members, what was I going to say now? It's publicly being available on our website, the Cabinet paper. It's going to Cabinet shortly, and we'll be looking for the further consultation and discussion during the next couple of months, as Julian's alluded, in April, May time. Just really keen for the group and also Territorial Authorities members just to please do that consultation. That is really important. We really want your input from a national level when that consultation document does come out. Also, the Catastrophic Event Handbook that has been signed off by NEMA's Chief Executive and the Director of Emergency Management, John Price. So that is now on the NEMA website. It is available for public viewing. So I really encourage members to have a look at that document when you have that opportunity. The other area is resilience funding. I just thought I'd mention this. Taupo have a resilient fund application in progress at the moment. NEMA is currently reviewing all our applications, and we should have a decision in early April. And that's all I have for myself.
Thank you, Matthew. Is there any questions, Matthew, on the NEMA report?
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Downer.
My big one is the resilience fund. It got reduced. What was it? I mean, 689 just seems a drop in the bucket. Because is that just for Waikato, or is it just for New Zealand, that resilience fund that they can apply to?
That is a resilience fund. Originally, it was 899,000. It was reduced to 689,000. And this is due to a multi-year project. So there's a number of projects that's been ongoing. So that's why it's been reduced to $700,000. So there is, I think there's about 25 applications in so far. So it is oversubscribed at this moment in time.
So who determines the fund?
The fund has been the set amount for the previous 40 years. So it hasn't actually moved along as of yet. So there is some discussion in progress in the near future for that to be increased.
So who advocates for that, Matthew? You know, is it?
That's NEMA is advocating that increase in funding.
So is there any way that like groups like ours can advocate with you or put submissions in to increase it? Because I just think, you know, we just heard from John, you know, I mean, it is, you know, geographically New Zealand and the coastlines, and, you know, even look at major cities, Wellington, Auckland and stuff like that. You know, to me, you know, when it says, you know, it's a leaked increasing readiness to some tsunamis and flooding resilience, it just seems a drop in the bucket.
Yes.
you know, when we're so vulnerable.
And
to
part
see
of the
what
work
the-
that is ongoing at the moment with the improvement program is upgrading and looking at how we can actually grade that some of these different areas, including that resilience fund as well.
Thank you, Councillor Dana. And that is actually a very good question. I will now recognise Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. My question, in fact, you took the words out of my mouth on the last one, but I also have a question in regard to the tsunami template and the new processes that are in place in regard to the level of warnings. Can you just talk to that briefly as to, you know, it says that it's now live. Is that correct? And that's underway? I haven't seen anything publicly mentioned about that.
No, the new templates and the new warning systems are not actually live as of yet. The consultation with CDM groups closed on the 14th of February. We are currently working through those changes at this moment in time. So once they have been changed, they will be advised through to the group office in near course. I'm not sure of the actual timeline as of yet, though.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Chair recognises Councillor Buckthorpe.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a question on the Starlink. You had referred to it. You haven't got a definitive date there yet, but is there a likely time frame that it might be on deck?
Unfortunately not. I don't
Still
have
nothing.
any update as of yet.
Because it's been a long time in the waiting.
It has, and yeah, as the report does say, we just encourage those members that if you are going to go for Starlink, please do go ahead. And then what we'll do is we'll change over once our system is up and running.
Well, thank you very, very much, Matthew. Just one question I personally had was, as I say, we talked very quickly about the roadmap, and I was just wondering what the integration with the roadmap and the new legislation coming out, and have the connections between the two, and the fact that, from what I believe, is that we're empowering territorial authorities more than we have to date. Is that a correct assumption or not?
I think that's something that I'll probably have to take back through to NEMA, just discuss further. We are looking, as I say, there's a lot of consultation happening between NEMA and all CDM groups and territorial authorities at this moment in time, or will be happening in due course.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion on this issue? Thank you very much, Matthew, for your presentation. I have Councillor Grant is moving the acceptance of the report. I have a seconder. Philip, thank you for Councillor Buckthorpe. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. All right, we now move and we have a resolution, the proposal of a resolution to move into exclude the public. And Councillor Downard, a seconder. Councillor Ngataki. All those in favour? There will be just a momentary break while we actually disconnect.